Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we are going to break down numerous matchups on the UFC 308 pay-per-view and prelim card. So, this is one of my favorite pay-per-view cards in quite some time. I felt like the Pereira Roundtree one was good. I felt like, obviously, UFC 300 was an absolute banger. But we have some spots here that I think are important to dive into. So I'm not going to take too much time in the intro. I'm going to try to include timestamps. So if you don't want to watch the entire video, I know it's always a long one because I do probably about 5 to 6, 7 minutes on each fight, and then it's 6 or 7 fights. It's 40 plus minutes, and I know a lot of people don't have a ton of time, but I'm going to try to do my best to do that for you guys. All right, so the first fight we're going to look at is Armen Petrosyan versus Shara Magomedov. All right, so the main thing here when I'm looking at these profiles is we have Petrosyan and Magomedov. They are going to fight at a similar pace. Okay, 15 distance attempts per minute, and then there's a stark difference here, okay? Shara is a absolute sniper, okay? 63% distance accuracy offense is incredible, okay? That is just astronomically high. The only thing I've seen higher is going to be Alex Pereira. And so, with that being said, though, this distance defense is horrendous. 53% distance defense. What that means is he is getting hit 53% of the time an opponent is throwing a distance strike. Okay, so he's getting hit more times than not, which is crazy. Considering the average is about 40%. The average distance accuracy is right around like 45%. So this is insane. That's a big difference. So, and that's one of the barometers. Anytime I see a fighter who has a distance defense over 50% like this, bad red flag. So also I want to note that with all of these profiles, as you can see, I have an insane amount of fights on this database. So I've redone the profiles, and if they have been in my database for the last year or so, I'm including only like their last 3 to 4 matchups in their sample size, simply because I do not want to add fighters who have fought a lot in the previous couple years and then add on the other fights before that. It's just important because you want to get a fighter, it's his or her statistics to be accurate to what you're looking at, for the fight coming up. So in this fight here, Magomedov, he is more accurate. He's more defensive. He's more of a defensive liability overall. Now, also in his sample size, he only has 3 UFC fights that total 23 distance minutes versus Petrosyan, who has fought for 41 distance minutes. Now, the thing is, neither one of these guys are really, looking to wrestle or grapple or clinch or anything like that. They're looking to stand at distance and essentially bang. That's what they want to do. They're both liabilities on the ground, defensively. Now, obviously, Magomedov comes from Dagestan, so you would think maybe he would reach into his pocket and try to, use some of that. I'm sure he has grappling ability, but we just haven't seen it to date. So we can't sit here and act as if he's going to change up his game plan. So, a couple of things. When we look here, they're very similar height, 6'2", 6'3". The reach is negligible in my opinion. Shara is a little bit younger, but Petrosyan is still, he's 33 years old, so he'll be 34. So he's still in a decent prime, right? So Petrosyan's last several fights that he's fought, have done well. He's 4-2 in the UFC, and he's lost to grapplers. He has not lost to strikers. Now, Adolfo Vieira is obviously the black belt hunter. He's just submitted everybody that there can be. I mean, Fluffy Hernandez is the only person to submit him, which is insane. And then obviously Kyle Barallo is incredible. He's very good, right? So when we're looking at this competition that he's faced, it's not really. It's not even really comparable. Shara has fought, Michael O, Antonio Tricoli, and Bruno Silva. I mean, totally fine. He's done well in all those. He knocked out Tricoli. But in reality, like, the competition is not even comparable. Now, the thing is, Shara is a kickboxing savant. And I think that's kind of obvious based off looking at the statistics here. But the thing that stands out to me that is more eye-opening is simply that that distance defense. I don't know if that's going to be more of like just a laziness, like he feels like he can't, these guys can't stand with him, and he's just light years ahead of them. But Petrosyan can strike, and I think it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that, if we're standing in the pocket, we cannot be a defensive liability. And I think like this is the type of matchup the UFC wants. They want to put Shara in a striking matchup because they're not going to feed him to anybody with a pulse grappling, because he's not good on the ground, like defensively at least. And so in this fight, I lean towards Petrosyan simply because the distance defense is just a huge red flag. And I feel like Petrosyan at I think he's plus 136 is solid. I think that's a solid line. Excuse me. Now we're going to go on to our next fight, which is going to be Magomed Ankaleav versus Aleksander Rakic. And so, or Rakic, however, pronounce. Now, Magomed Ankaleav is coming off just the absolute destruction of Johnny Walker. I mean, maybe he retired him. He needs to retire. It was bad. But anyway, it's pretty simple when I'm looking at this fight, okay? Ankaleav fights at an extremely monotonous pace on the feet, like just 7.82 distance strikes per minute. I mean, just absolutely, just plodding pace, if I had to say so myself. Okay? Now, neither one of these guys have been controlled defensively. 2.7% for defensive control for Rakic, and Ankaleav 1.4%. Both of them do like to have offensive control. Rakic is more of, he's not a wrestler per se. He's more of a clinch game type guy. But one thing I will say, when he fought Yuri, he was dominating Prochazka with the leg kicks. And if there's anything that we know Ankaleav has, his weakness is fucking leg kicks. He just does not know how to check them. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, because this guy is top notch. He's like top tier in the light heavyweight division, but he, for the love of God, cannot check fucking leg kicks. I don't get it. Like, it's kind of crazy, He couldn't check. Like, Jan basically fought him to a draw because he couldn't check leg kicks. I don't get it, Now, the other thing is, Ankaleav is on an insane streak, right? The draw to Blakovic, and, he hadn't lost since Paul Craig, basically. Everything else was a no contest and a draw. So, like, it feels like he should walk through this, right? Rakic is coming off the Prochazka knockout and the loss to Blakovic where he, blew out his knee. So that was bad. But in reality, we're looking at this from Ankaleav probably needs to wrestle here, right? He needs to wrestle and he needs to dominate that type of exchange. Again, he is that is his strength too. Like, he is, it's kind of infuriating, right? Because when you're looking at stuff like this, you're like, okay, clear path to victories, but fighters don't always want to take that clear path. They want to prove something, right? And I get that because, you know, why not? The thing is, if he wins this fight, he's probably fighting for the light heavyweight championship, and he's gonna wrestle Pereira. Like I don't care what anybody says. Like Roundtree is literally the only one who stood with him outside of Adesanya, obviously, and was like, "Fuck it, let's go," you know. And so, but I digress. The thing here is, I can't really have a play on Ankaleav simply for the fact that the line's too wide. It's wide. You know, I think it's like -4 something, 410, right? And like he should beat Rakic, like easily. He should. But he can't check fucking leg kicks. And he fights at this asinine slow pace. And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, like, if this fight's close, you know, judges are terrible. So, like, they could be giving it to whoever's more active. And if he can't check leg kicks, like that's the thing, okay? Like, Rakic was beating Yuri Prochazka, right? But, like, you can't take your time with Yuri. Like, he will force you to fight. But Ankalaev is not like that. He's a plotter. And he likes to stick in his zone. And the thing is, like, Rakic can fight like that all night. Like, you know, I don't know. So I can't take Ankalaev here. I can probably take Rakic for a small wager on you know, to win because he is getting solid odds. But it's not my favorite fight of the card by far. So we go on to the next fight, and it's going to be Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige. And this is such an interesting fight to me, and I feel like it is going under the radar for a lot of reasons. And the main reason is I feel like, you know, we saw Ige just come out and fight Diego Lopes on 1 day notice, which is just the most gangster shit I've ever seen in my life. And so, you know, we know that he's going to want to stand. That's like kind of been like, that's his thing. He wants to stand. He wants to stand and fight. Obviously, going that far with going to a decision with Diego Lopes is incredible, especially on 1 day notice. You know, but the thing is, you know, Ige does have some power, 1.1% knockdown percentage. And I think we've all kind of seen that, right? We've seen that with his ability to, like, just shut the lights out of people with one shot, which is kind of crazy. You know, that's where he got the nickname, right? Dan 50K Ige. So Murphy, on the other hand, he's a sniper, man. 53%, again, just an incredible accuracy percentage, and defensively sound, 37%. And he's fighting at a higher pace than Ige, you know, 13.85 distance attempts per minute versus Ige at 10.04. Now, when we get over here to the defensive side, Murphy is more well-rounded, okay? 22% offensive control percentage versus Ige, who is, you know, 22.6 defensive control percentage, which can be concerning. The reason this is concerning to me, excuse me, goodness gracious, allergies and everything, is because, like, Murphy can take the fight to different areas. He has more viable paths to, like, get to a decision. And I think that, you know, that does matter. Now, when we look at his overall, you know, fights, he's on a 6-fight winning streak. Completely dominated Edson Barboza, which, you know, is very hard to do at any rate, right? And so, you know, he dominated him from start to finish, you know, and that's, you know, Barboza is older and he is going down that path. But I feel like this fight, it's two things, right? Ige, his losses are specifically to grapplers, like, of recent. You know, obviously Calvin Kattar beat the shit out of him, but that was 4 years ago, and that's like 12 fights ago almost. Recently, he lost to Bryce Mitchell, and he lost to Movsar Evelev. And obviously the Diego Lopes fight, nobody expected him to win that fight. But the one thing I would say is Ige has fought infinitely better competition over the last several years. And again, I hate this because I'm on a lot of dogs on this card, but I mean the case can be made for him at plus 235 simply because he does have like one punch knockout power. Like that is in his arsenal. Murphy, on the other hand, that's not really it's not really his game. He does have 2 knockouts on his record, but they're over 3 years ago, and he's not as active as Ige. I'm gonna lean Ige here. It's not one of my favorite plays, but I think there is reason to believe that as long as he can stay on his feet, I don't think he's going to be outclassed in this matchup. I think he will hang tough and has the potential at any part of the fight to win. All right, so we're going to go on to our next fight, which is going to be Geoff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. Now, RDA is an absolute legend. I can't really say otherwise, right? He's just an absolute fucking legend. The thing here, though, is Geoff Neal is a monster. And, I mean, he is a big 170er also. RDA is coming up to 170, and the biggest eye-opening thing to me for him over the last several years was the fight against Vicente Luque. And Luque was too big for him. He could not grapple him. He could not clinch him. He could not lean on him. He was too big. And Geoff Neal dominated Vicente Luque. We don't do MMA math here, but that's eye-opening to see. And RDA on the feet fights at just an astronomically slow pace. Again, he gives Ankaleav a run for his money on this card for pace. Now, what that tells me here is, and Geoff Neal has 3 knockdowns, 1.5% knockdown rate, and his sample size, a gigantic tall tale sign. Because the thing here is, even though Neal's defense is not good, 50%, I don't know if RDA has enough in the juice left in the tank to take advantage of that. Okay, let's put it in perspective here. RDA hasn't knocked somebody out in almost a decade. Okay, Donald Cerrone was the last person he knocked out. So if he's not going to knock out Geoff Neal, who has fought the likes of Machado Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Santiago Ponzinibbio, all 170ers, no doubt. No way they can make 155. Dos Anjos is not going to be able to. He's going to have to outpoint him. And I don't think you can outpoint somebody and fight at a lower volume. And I don't think he's going to be able to wrestle him the way that he needs to, and the way he dominated 155ers like Moicano. And so this is a long line. This line is wide also. So I would lean Geoff Neal. I would realistically lean Geoff Neal via TKO, which is plus 175. So, yeah, I think that's a solid line. And that's something that I could definitely see happen, especially if he lands flush and hard enough in the pocket with RDA. Now, the next fight is going to be the co-main event, and that is probably my favorite fight of the card. It's so hard because I love Max Holloway, and the Topuria fight is insane. But this is kind of how I feel. Okay, Robert Whittaker is one of my favorite fighters to watch simply because I think he's a great fighter, and I think that he's just a great dude. It's really hard to find that mix, right? When you're watching just straight up violence. And so the biggest thing here for me is this fight is 5 rounds. Khamzat Chimaev is going to have to get Robert Whittaker out of there probably in the first round, maybe the second, if possible. But if he doesn't, it's going to be It's going to be a long-ass night, basically, for Chimaev. And so Whittaker has only been controlled for 85 seconds and his sample size of 2,300, so that's almost 40 minutes, okay? 40, yeah, that's almost 40. I'm losing my mind. Almost 40 minutes, he's only been controlled for 85 seconds. Now, when we look at the who he's fought there, Costa, Ikram, Aleksander, Dricus, Marvin Vittori, like that's his sample size since then, those last 4 fights. And that's all happened within the last year and a half, or last 2 years, okay? When we look at Khamzat, he, obviously fought Usman, and, he did, beat Usman, even though I didn't feel like there was anything impressive about it. And then when you go back, he missed weight against, we all know he missed against Diaz. That feels like 7 years ago, but somehow it's only 2. This is the thing, okay? Chimaev is fighting at 185, okay? That's probably where he needs to be, right? Because of his weight issues. Like, Whittaker came up from 170 and has fought at 185 forever now. And he is dominant at 185. And I do not think you're going to be able – he's going to have to finish Whittaker inside the first 2 rounds, probably the first round, like I said. Because the problem is, if he tires down in front of Robert Whittaker, he is going to get murdered in the later rounds. I mean, he is going to get absolutely demolished. Whittaker is faster, and I am going to say strong. He has more power in his hands and his kicks. Chimaev, he struggled with Gilbert Burns, who is a 155er. I mean, you could say he's a 170er, but he's a small 170er. Robert Whittaker would make Gilbert Burns look like a small child if they were to fight each other and stand next to each other. This type of, blitzing attack that Whittaker has and this explosive athletic style, it can get him in trouble early because, Khamzat's going to double leg power, wrestle, right? But the thing is, this is a gigantic step up in competition. This is not Kevin Holland. This is not Kamaru Usman, who is a 170er at the end of his prime. Okay? This is Whittaker, who is arguably in the middle of his second prime, which is insane to say out loud. He's 33 years old. Like, I know that he couldn't get over the hump against Adesanya, and that sucks. Like, I hate that. But, like, he's in his second prime, basically. And I think 2 things can be true here, okay? Whittaker has never fought someone with the wrestling prowess of Chimaev, and Chimaev has never fought anybody nearly as good as Robert Whittaker. And if you're going to give me 2-1 on one of the best middleweights in the world versus an untested fighter who does not fight often, I'm going to take the 2. You're going to have to show me. You're going to have to prove me wrong. Okay? All right, so last but not least is going to be the main event. The whole reason you're probably coming to this video is to see, how I view Topuria and Max Holloway. Okay? So if you're looking at the sheet here, you're probably like, hey, Andrew, you've got 2 Holloway sheets here, right? So I was watching a video probably about a week ago, and there's an important thing to understand. Holloway seems to have changed his entire dynamic offensively. And we think of like, okay, he's just going to melt people with volume. He's going to, that's how he's going to win, right? That's how he's always won. But that's not really been the case the last 3 fights. This is his profile, including the previous 3 fights and his profile before that, okay? So this is a new profile, just his last 3 fights. As you can see, his distance attempts per minute have went down significantly, okay? Like 6 less per minute. And his accuracy has went up. And his defense has gotten better, 39%. So it's not, he's not trying to, weaponize just this insane pace anymore. He is trying to melt people with cleaner, more succinct punches, right? And my example is very, very simple, okay? I mean, he didn't get a knockdown in the Arnold Allen fight, which is completely bullshit because he knocked him down. But in his last 3 fights, he has 3 knockdowns, okay? In his previous, let's look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 fights before that, he only had 3 knockdowns. Okay? So there is a gigantic shift in strategy here. And, I mean, again, I think it's kind of crazy because everybody thinks Max Holloway's old as shit. He's not. He's only 33. Okay? He's actually 32. He's not even 33 yet. And so, like, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that. And I know people are going to be like, okay, MMA math, Topuria, I cannot, I'm fucking up. Ilia, destroyed Volkanovski. Volkanovski beat Holloway 3 times. Ilia is going to destroy Holloway. That's just not how it works, man. That's not how MMA works. And the thing is, like, the thing is this, okay? Ilia is a very good grappler and a very good wrestler, and he could easily try to take that part of his game and implement it. I mean, because he does have an advantage there. And if we're being completely honest, 5 knockdowns at 2.3% knockdown rate, I would say he definitely has the power advantage. And I would even say, I'd go further to say, from a technical standpoint, he is better. Technically, from a boxing standpoint, he is better. But this is not a boxing match, okay? It's not. He throws absolutely no kicks. It's all boxing, okay, on his feet. Max has implemented kicks, spinning wheel kicks. You saw how he broke Justin Gaethje's nose. This is the thing, okay? There is no way, and I do not believe this, Topuria does not hit harder than Justin Gaethje. He just does not, okay? Is he cleaner? Is the technique better? 100%. 100% technique better, cleaner punches. I don't sit here and think that Holloway is landing at a 57% clip. And they're throwing the same amount of punches, 11.8. I know that, the breakdowns have been that, Holloway, nobody really thought he was going to beat Gaethje when we went up. They thought it was a stretch too far. I didn't feel that way. I felt like, he was going to stand with Gaethje and he was going to be fine. And he was. And obviously everybody knows the insane knockout with 1 second left on the clock. I don't know if that's going to happen in this fight. I don't know if they're going to, Topuria says he's going to come out and point to the ground 10 seconds into the fight. I don't believe that shit's going to happen. He might, whatever. But the thing is, this seems like a stretch too far. And when I look, Topuria has fought some monsters. Let's not get it twisted here. Josh Emmett, Volkanovski, obviously Bryce Mitchell was way outclassed in that fight. But he's fought some monsters, and he's got a knockdown in 4 straight fights, right? But when he went up to 55 to fight Jai Herbert, he didn't take him seriously, okay? And he looked bad in that fight. Now, he got there, and he got the knockout win, and that's great. But it feels like this is the matchup that everybody says the UFC was avoiding. This is that matchup, and they can't avoid it now because it's inevitable. I think Holloway is going to get in there, and I don't know if he's going to finish him because that's a stretch far, But I feel like there's levels, right? Even with the technique, I just feel like he's going to lean on his experience, and he's going to take it to this guy. And I think the lights are going to be, he caught Volkanovski on a downswing. He's coming off the knockout from Makhachev. And, the doubt, even though you could say you have no doubt in your mind going into that fight if you're Volkanovski, it's there. Like, it is there, right? And so I just don't think he's catching Holloway on a high. And I don't, unless he tries to grapple him, which would be his easiest path to victory, which, could work. I can't side with him. I have to take Holloway here, and I'm going to find out, Like he said, if you want to beat the best, then you got to beat blessed. That's it. Many have tried, many have failed, literally. And I think Holloway is going to show up, and I think he's going to take it to him. And I think at plus money, it's a gift. So if you made it through this whole video, I really appreciate it. This is one of the longer videos that I do because I break down all the matchups that are interesting to me. If you like the content, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, subscribe, share with a loved one or a family or a friend. The channel is very small, but we're trying to grow as much as we can. I try to put out as much content as I can a week. It's mainly UFC and it's primarily college football. So if that's up your in your wheelhouse, then come in and join. The videos are usually pretty short. They're 10 to 15 minutes. I break down using advanced statistics and not like bullshit angles that people like to lean into. And So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.